Somewhere tonight, someone ordered a local craft beer specifically to avoid drinking Heineken. Someone else ordered a Dos Equis in Mexico, a Tiger beer in Singapore, and a Red Stripe in Jamaica. None of them bought a Heineken, except they all did without even knowing it. This is how one of the world's largest beer companies built a $36 billion empire by selling you the illusion that you are not buying from an empire. In 1864, a 22-year-old named Gerard Adriaan Heineken bought a small brewery in Amsterdam called De Hooiberg, the Haystack. It had been operating since 1592. He renamed it after himself, brought in a chemist named Dr. Hartog Elian, who had studied under Louis Pasteur and developed a proprietary yeast strain in 1886 that is still used in every bottle of Heineken produced today. That yeast strain is the first clue that something unusual is happening here. By the 1930s, Heineken was exporting to over 50 countries. By 1933, the day Prohibition ended in America, a ship carrying Heineken was already waiting in New York Harbor. It became the first European beer imported into the U.S. after the ban lifted. By the 1980s, the green bottle with the red star had become one of the most recognizable consumer products on Earth, a symbol of somewhere else, something premium, something imported. Here's what that label never told you. The Heineken in your fridge probably wasn't brewed in the Netherlands. The bottle sold in the US was brewed in New York. The one in India was brewed in India. Indonesia, Brazil, Jamaica, Vietnam, and Nigeria, all local production. Heineken doesn't export beer. It exports a recipe, a proprietary yeast strain centrally cultivated in Amsterdam and distributed worldwide, and a team of Dutch technicians who fly out to install equipment, set standards, and train local staff to produce the exact same product. The same bottle, the same taste, the same red star, made down the road. Which means the premium imported lager you paid extra for, the one that felt like it came from somewhere sophisticated, wasn't imported at all. The imported sticker was part of the product. Heineken understood something before almost anyone else in the industry. In beer, perception of origin is worth more than actual origin. People pay a premium for the idea of somewhere else, and as long as you never correct them, they'll keep paying it. That gap between what people think they're buying and what they're actually buying turned out to be the foundation everything else was built on. But here is what makes it even more interesting. Take that bottle of Heineken, remove the label, the green glass, the red star, the association with Champions League nights and Formula One grandstands. Pour it blind into a glass, next to a Budweiser, a Stella Artois, and a Peroni. Run a taste test. Independent studies have done exactly this consistently for decades. The result is always the same. Heineken places mid-table. It is not bad, it is clean, it is drinkable, it is consistent. But it is not, by any measurable standard, a premium product. And yet it commands a premium price in almost every market on Earth. So if it is not the taste, and it is not the origin, what exactly are you paying for? That answer starts in the 1990s. By then, Heineken had a problem that decades of success had quietly created. The green bottle was everywhere, on every bar shelf, in every city, in every country. That sounds like a victory, until you understand what ubiquity does to a premium brand. The more places you see something, the less special it feels. By the mid-1990s, Heineken had become so globally recognizable, so obviously corporate, so inescapably present, that a new generation of drinkers was actively looking for something it was not. They wanted local, independent, authentic. A beer with a story that felt human rather than manufactured. The craft beer movement was doing to Heineken exactly what Heineken had done to domestic lagers 30 years earlier. It was making the existing product feel old, corporate, and out of touch. Sales of premium lagers were softening, craft was exploding, and Heineken, for all its resources, could not buy its way into authenticity. Or so it seemed. Because what Heineken did next is either brilliant or deeply cynical, depending on how you look at it, probably both. They couldn't manufacture authenticity, so they bought it instead. In 2015, Heineken acquired a 50% stake in Lagunitas Brewing Company. At that point, Lagunitas was one of the most respected independent craft breweries in America. Founded in Petaluma, California in 1993, it had built its reputation on genuinely good beer, an anti-corporate attitude, and a founder, Tony McGee, who had spent years railing against exactly the kind of consolidation that was now happening to him. The sale was controversial. Craft beer purists were furious. Lagunitas' fans felt betrayed. 2 years later, Heineken bought the remaining 50%. Tony McGee, the fiercely independent founder, was out. Heineken owned 100% of Lagunitas. The cans still say Petaluma, California. The branding still feels independent. The logo still has the same hand-drawn quality. The marketing still talks about craft and passion and the spirit of independent brewing. None of it mentions Amsterdam. None of it mentions Heineken. They did the same with Beavertown Brewery in the UK, a London craft brewery with a cult following and skull-heavy branding that could not be further from the Heineken aesthetic. Heineken acquired a minority stake in 2018, then bought the rest. They also bought Brixton Brewery in South London and Oedipus Brewing in Amsterdam. Each one kept its identity. Each one now feeds revenue back to the same parent company. But the most revealing example of how Heineken thinks about authenticity didn't involve buying a real brewery at all. In 2015, the same year they were acquiring Lagunitas, Heineken quietly launched a beer in Ireland called Blasket Blonde. It was sold in County Kerry, marketed as a locally made craft beer from a small regional Irish brewery with deep local roots. Shortly after, a second beer appeared, Be and Try Brew, in County Cork. Same positioning, same local craft story, same implication of a small, passionate brewer making something real for the community. There were no breweries. Heineken had invented them. The names were fictional. The local heritage was invented. The entire story of small, passionate Irish brewers was constructed by a Dutch corporation with 85,000 employees and a Formula One sponsorship. When the arrangement became public, both beers were quietly pulled from shelves. No press release, no apology, no acknowledgement that anything had happened, just gone. That moment is worth sitting with, because Heineken didn't create fake Irish craft beers because they ran out of ideas. They did it because they understood exactly what consumers were looking for, and they were willing to manufacture it wholesale when buying it wasn't an option. When authenticity became the product, Heineken started producing authenticity. Fictional breweries invented heritage, the feel of something real delivered by a machine, and that costume runs much deeper than craft beer. When Heineken enters a new market, it rarely arrives as Heineken. It arrives by buying the beer that people in that market already love, the beer that feels like theirs. In Mexico, Heineken owns Tecate dos Iquis, Sol, Bohemia, and Carta Blanca. 5 brands that feel distinctly Mexican because they are Mexican. They were founded by Mexicans. They have decades of Mexican cultural history behind them. They are drunk at Mexican family gatherings and Mexican football matches. They are also owned by a company in Amsterdam. In Jamaica, Red Stripe, the beer so associated with Jamaican identity that it appeared in Hollywood films as a symbol of the island, is Heineken. In Italy, Birra Moretti, which feels as Italian as pasta, is Heineken. In Southeast Asia, Tiger Beer, the brand with the tiger on the can, the beer of Singapore, Vietnam, and Indonesia, is Heineken. In the United Kingdom, Newcastle Brown Ale, the working-class beer from the northeast of England with over 90 years of regional identity, is Heineken. So is Strongbow, the cider brand that has been in British pubs for 60 years. Every single one of these brands maintains its local identity completely, its local advertising, its local price point, its local story. The parent company never appears. You think you're drinking something that belongs to your culture, your city, your people. You're drinking Heineken in a different costume. The financial logic behind this is almost elegant in how ruthless it is. Think about what Heineken has actually built. A global brand selling at premium prices in every market on Earth. But instead of forcing that global brand into markets where people resent corporate products, which is every market, they let local brands do the work. Local brands that already have the trust, the loyalty, the cultural meaning that Heineken could never buy directly. The consumer never needs to know who owns what, and for decades, most did. Now here's what that invisibility is actually worth. Heineken's total revenue in 2024 was over $36 billion. A bottle of beer costs between 15 and 30 cents to produce depending on the market. That same bottle sells for $7 to $10 at a bar in New York or London. For a can at a supermarket, you are paying $2 to $3 for something that costs less than 30 cents to make. That margin exists not because the beer is exceptional. It exists because of 160 years of brand building, sports sponsorship, strategic acquisition, and the manufactured perception of premium quality and authentic origin. And here is the part that ties everything together. Every element of the Heineken playbook, the fake imported status, the craft acquisitions, the invented Irish breweries, the invisible local ownership, all of it serves one single financial purpose: protecting the margin. Because the moment consumers stop believing the story, the moment they realize the premium lager in the green bottle is brewed down the road from the same recipe as everything else, the $7 price tag becomes very hard to justify. The entire business is built on a perception, and perceptions require constant maintenance, which is why Heineken spends roughly 11% of its total revenue on marketing every single year. That is nearly $4 billion annually, more than the entire GDP of some small countries, spent specifically on making sure you keep believing the story. The Champions League deal alone, $65 million a year for 30 years, was not a marketing expense. It was infrastructure. Every time you watched a Champions League game and saw the green Heineken banner behind the goal, a small association was being built. Premium Global, the beer of the biggest moments. By the time you walked into a bar the next day, you were not making a rational choice about flavor. You were completing a pattern that had been laid down over decades of conditioning. That is what you were paying for. Not the beer, the pattern. Which is why in November 2025, when Heineken announced it was ending its 30-year Champions League partnership, it was not a crisis. It was the same calculation, running the same way it always has. Formula One now reaches a younger, more global demographic. Premier Paddle, the fastest growing sport in the world, gives them access to a completely new audience. The specific sponsorship changes, the underlying strategy to own the moment where people drink never changes. Over 170 brands, 70 countries, 85,000 employees. Breweries on 6 continents producing the same recipe from the same yeast strain that a Pasteur-trained chemist developed in Rotterdam in 1886. And a core idea that has never changed since a 22-year-old bought a brewery in Amsterdam 160 years ago. People do not buy beer. They buy how the beer makes them feel. They buy the bar, the game, the culture, the story on the label. They buy the feeling of authenticity, the feeling of locality, the feeling of independence. And all of those feelings can be manufactured, packaged, acquired, and distributed at scale. The green bottle, the red star, the craft beer with the invented brewery name in County Kerry, the Jamaican lager that feels like it belongs to Jamaica, the Mexican beer that feels like Mexico. Same company, same playbook, different costume every time. And next time you're at a bar, scanning the menu, looking for something that feels more real than a corporate lager, it might be worth asking who actually owns what you are about to order. Consider the question of ownership. The answer might not be who you think.